doors pushed.
But Dr. Moore,
closes about the fingers.
I understand that. But my question is,
I think it's important that they understand that.
this is the time for me to ask you questions. Your counsel will have the ability to rehabilitate you and ask you questions on redirect. Right now, let's try my question.
Okay.
观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎来到紧张时刻。强尼律师团队37岁的卡米尔上周精彩的法庭表现，为他在网上赢得了大量粉丝。上周的交叉询问环节中，卡米尔使得安博当庭承认，他没有将离婚协议的700万美元全部捐给慈善机构，这与他先前声称的全部交于慈善机构的事实不符。上周有记者在法庭外询问卡米尔，你是否在和强尼约会？网上全部传遍了。卡米尔也只是开怀一笑，对门口聚集的粉丝挥手致意，并未回答这个问题。在上期视频的交叉询问环节中，整形医生摩尔发表证言，认为强尼手指的伤势和其描述的形成原因不符。我们一起来看一下卡米尔会如何反击。
Good morning, Dr. Moore.
Good morning.
You said you reviewed Mr. Depp's video deposition, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you said you reviewed Mr. Depp's testimony at this trial, correct?
That's correct.
And was that also a video of his testimony?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified that Mr. Depp demonstrated that his hand was flat on a surface, is that correct?
That's correct.
That's not entirely accurate, is it, though?
No, his description was relatively consistent in both, including turning and resting the hand on the edge.
Isn't it true, Dr. Moore, that when Mr. Depp did the demonstration in his deposition, he showed that his fingers were hanging over the bar?
Well, even hanging over the bar, it still leaves the dorsum of the hand or the nail vulnerable.
That's not my question, Dr. Moore. My question is, isn't it true that Mr. Depp said his fingers were not laying flat on a table, they were hanging over the bar?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, you knew that when you made that opinion. Isn't that correct?
Well, I believe that as I demonstrated sitting here, that I said that he had said they were slightly curled over, I think was the description that I gave.
Your description in this courtroom was that it was laying flat, and I think you've done that now twice. But in your deposition, you testified that his fingers were actually hanging over the bar. Isn't that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Misstates the witness's testimony. He clearly indicated they were curled. Or could have been curled.
Overruled.
So that's a distinction that perhaps I misstated in one of the two descriptions. However, that does not substantially change my opinion of the impact it would have on the mechanism.
Dr. Moore, just at the outset, your billing rate for providing deposition testimony is $1,000 per hour?
That's correct.
All right. And you were deposed in this action for several hours on March 22nd, 2022?
That's correct.
And your billing rate for providing trial testimony is $5,000 per day?
That's correct.
You were retained in this case by Ms. Heard's legal team, correct?
Correct.
And over the last few years, you've provided expert services for one of Ms. Heard's law firms on at least 2 other cases, right?
That's correct, yes.
Dr. Moore, is it fair to say that you have no personal knowledge as to how Mr. Depp injured his finger in Australia, correct?
No, I have no personal knowledge. My impression is based on his description of the injury and the available medical records for review.
But you weren't in Australia with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard, correct?
I was not in Australia, no.
And so therefore you have no personal knowledge as to how that injury was sustained?
Correct.
All right. You also never personally examined Mr. Depp's finger, did you?
Correct.
You didn't examine Mr. Depp's finger at the time it was injured?
I did not.
And you never provided any medical treatment to Mr. Depp in connection with his finger injury, did you?
I did not.
Now, you've testified that you identified Mr. Depp's finger injury as a crush injury, correct?
Correct.
And a crush injury is when a body part is crushed or trapped between 2 opposing firm surfaces, yes?
Yes.
And a crush injury to a finger can occur when a foreign object hits the finger, right?
Yes.
And based on the pictures that you reviewed of Mr. Depp's finger injury, you cannot determine what particular object caused the injury to his finger. Yes?
Well, I can't determine exactly what object did it. I think that I can say with confidence that the described mechanism of the bottle hitting and shattering the finger was not consistent with the appearance of the injury.
I understand that. And my question is just very specific. You can't determine the object that caused the injury to Mr. Depp's finger.
Well, it's a little bit more of a non-specific answer. I mean, I can't determine the exact object, but I can determine that it's unlikely that it was sustained in the manner described.
A bottle is a foreign object, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So you can't rule out that the injury to Mr. Depp's finger was caused by a vodka bottle, correct?
Well, based on the injury pattern, I can say that the described mechanism of injury is inconsistent with medical findings.
Right. But because a vodka bottle is a foreign object, you can't rule out that a vodka bottle is what caused Mr. Depp's injury.
Well, I can't rule out that a vodka bottle caused the injury, but I can rule out that it was caused in the manner described in his testimony.
You can't rule out that the injury was caused by a knife, right?
I think it's unlikely that the injury was caused by a knife.
But you can't rule it out. Do you remember giving testimony in this case, Dr. Moore?
Deposition?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And you were under oath, correct?
Correct.
All right. And that was on March 22nd, 2022, yes?
Correct.
Okay.
随后，卡米尔和摩尔医生对峙他的证言。
Line 4.
Correct.
Question, but you can't rule it out completely, right? Answer, I can't rule anything out completely. I can't rule out that he caught it in the door, cut it with a knife, or slammed it in the car door. Or, again, as Dr. Gilmore said, we can't definitively say what caused this injury. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Okay.
Your Honor, I would object as to the incomplete impeachment. I think if she's going to read his answer, she also needs to read or give Dr. Moore the chance to read the paragraph below. She just picked out half of his answer.
You can redirect.
Yeah, as well as the paragraph above.
Dr. Moore, there's no question pending. Thank you, though.
哎呀，我们看到此时安博律师立即表示反对，声称卡米尔断章取义，后面还有一系列诱导性的问题。谁知此时卡米尔来了一句：“不好意思，我这部分的问题已经问完了，不过还是谢谢你。”
So you can't rule out that the injury was caused by a car door either. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. But it's your testimony sitting here today that you can rule out that the injury was caused by a vodka bottle. Is that your testimony?
My testimony is that I can rule out the injury as caused by the mechanism described by Mr. Depp in his deposition.
Okay. But you can't definitively say what caused the injury to Mr. Depp's finger.
Well, the definitive injury is a crush injury, again, I can't say. I mean, I think that it's quite likely that the initial mechanism described at the time of presentation of the accordion doors would classically create this injury pattern. You know, the hand up in front. If you picture accordion doors as the edge is closed, if the hand's up, the palm is exposed. If the door's pushed,
Dr. Moore,
closes about the fingers.
I understand that. But my question is...
I think it's important that they understand that.
This is the time for me to ask you questions. Your counsel will have the ability to rehabilitate you and ask you questions on redirect. Right now, let's try my question.
Okay.
哎呀，此时摩尔医生不顾卡米尔让其停止作答的要求，继续在和陪审团自顾自的解释。卡米尔直接来了一句：“不好意思，现在是老娘的时间，由我自己做主，请听下一题。”
You can't definitively say what caused the injury to Mr. Depp's fingers. Yes or no?
No.
Okay. And your analysis is based on an understanding of how Mr. Depp described the exact position of his finger at the time of the injury. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And your analysis is also based on the assumption that Mr. Depp's hand remained completely still in the instance that a vodka bottle was hurled at him. Yes?
No, my assessment is on his description of the vodka bottle striking the top of his finger.
But his hand stayed still, according to your analysis. Yes?
I guess it was still long enough for the bottle to hit it, but natural reaction would be to try to pull away.
随后，专家证人精神科医生斯皮格尔出庭作证。斯皮格尔医生声称，强尼除了酗酒之外，还长期吸食多种违禁品。长期的药物滥用的症状会逐渐使患者变得易怒、激动、多疑、嫉妒和衍生出更多的精神疾病，从而进一步演变为 IPV， 全称为 Intimate Partner Violence。 即对亲密伴侣的暴力行为。已经从业20年的娱乐业顾问凯瑟琳·阿诺德作为另一名专家证人出庭。在法庭上，凯瑟琳声称，强尼的电影事业早在安博爆出家暴事件之前便一直在走下坡路，而安博的演艺事业也因和强尼的互相起诉的家暴案受到了极大的影响。舆论的负面影响导致了安博的收入锐减，而他之所以能够保住在海王2中的角色，完全是因为男1号杰森的强力支持。最后和大家分享一下今天庭审现场的2个小彩蛋。在休庭期间，这位女士突然对坐在前排的强尼大喊：“强尼，我爱你，你是我的灵魂伴侣。”最后竟直接指着怀中的婴儿说道：“强尼，你可是孩子的父亲啊！”随后，该名女子第一时间被法警赶出法庭。同样在休庭期间，强尼正好和坐在身前的速记员对视了一下，双方都友善地微笑着打着招呼。请大家点赞、转发、订阅，紧张时刻频道将在明天第一时间更新周2的法庭实况。谢谢大家。